I'm live. Hello, hello. This is Thomas Bartke here, live on the Artisan Sound channel. And looks like I actually have some people who are waiting to see it live. And I know there is a little bit of a delay. Okay, so I think we're okay here. Hold on. Fine. All right, I just wanted to test and check to make sure that sound is going through and everything is working. Well, so some people are live. That is exceeding my expectations. The main reason for doing this live here is to not fall into the temptation of recording a video and editing it or re-recording it or doing shenanigans to make it less authentic than it would be if I actually just do it live and keep it the way it comes out. Let me just preface the whole thing in terms of why this video, why is it a video, and why is it on this channel, on the Artisan Sound channel. I started the Artisan Sound channel to be a kind of a place where I can document and place some educational material for how I do the sound design in at Artisan, and it's kind of addressing the somewhat greater community of people who are interested in live mixing sound for musical theater, and it's also specifically made and intended for people who might be interested in learning how to run the sound at Artisan in both of our stages. So that's the general primary purpose of the Artisan Sound channel. So we're up to about 50 videos that deal with technical issues, but also sound issues that are more practical and musical and artistic, you could say. But this video, as such as being a live video that talks about our experience in the production of our West Side Story run that we just completed, is kind of a foreign object or foreign body on this. And the reason why it's here at all is because yesterday we had our last circle where usually the staff members and some cast members who want to talk, say something to the other members of the cast and staff, get an opportunity to do that. But we wanted to give as many of you cast members the opportunity to do that, so that I felt it was better and more appropriate that I yielded my time to you guys, and it was just really touching and emotional to hear all of your things that are being said. And so I thought, okay, we didn't get around to me actually being able to talk to you in that format of having our circle before the last show. So I thought, well, since I already have this YouTube channel, I might as well do a YouTube live. And if you get a chance to see it live, that's great. And if you don't, then that's fine too. Then you can just watch it, because it will be on the same link available on YouTube after it's completed as a live broadcast. And so you can watch it at any time, and we can watch it later. We can watch it 5, 10, 20 years from now, when I look back at my impression of how my first experience running West Side Story as a music director and sound designer was, and how I felt about that. And it will be probably a nice piece of memory for myself, and maybe for some of you as well. So you don't need to, keep listening to this. If you get bored at some point, you can just tune out and go about you doing your things, or come back later and watch as much as you like. And I'm not offended by how little or how much you watch or how many views we get. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to say this to you, to every single one of you who listens and watches this, and to you as a group as well. I'm a little bit impaired today because I just took a long bike ride, and it triggered some of my allergies, and my juices are a little weird. And so if I'm tearing up, it's going to be probably due to the allergies, and not what you think. All right, so let me start at the top. I wanted to say thank you first and foremost to the Artisan staff for giving me the opportunity to run this production as both the package as music director as well as sound designer. And so I was in this function, and I personally, this is my highest preference in doing shows, musical theater shows, is where I can do the entire process, the artistic concept of music directing and teaching the music and exploring the expression and the just the intention of the music that we get as a cast, with the singers and with the artists that are involved. So exploring it and shaping it to what we want it to be, but then also to take it to the level where it sounds as best as I can make it sound with the, somewhat expertise that I have from things that I've done in the past, where I'm always ready to say, and I will talk about this, that I'm learning and growing every time I get an opportunity to do something like this. I'm growing very much and learning and gathering new expertise and new experience, and discover things that I did not know before, or I wouldn't have thought that, this is something that I have clearly in my vision and at my disposal, in my repertoire of things or fixes for problems, or things like that. So I always experience a joy of exploration in the process, both as a music director and also as a sound engineer or sound designer in this case. So thank you, Artisan staff, for allowing me this opportunity, giving me this opportunity to do it the way we did in West Side Story. It was very, very gratifying and fulfilling. I did all 27 shows, mixed all 27 shows, mostly from the audience. I think there was one half show where there was a technical issue that required me to mix it from the booth, and it worked too, but I prefer to sit in the audience, and it gives me a much more direct impression of how the sound works out for the audience, how it sounds for the audience, and I just prefer the experience, sitting in the audience and hearing exactly the full spectrum of the sound as it blends between the amplification that comes through the microphones and the speaker systems, and blending that with the direct sound of the singers. All right, so let's go one step further. This is going to be a little bit longer than it would have been if we had the time to let me say my appreciation to the cast in the circle. But like I said, you don't have to keep watching if you get bored at some point, or if it doesn't interest you enough. But anyway, so the next appreciation I want to express here is to our director, Chris, and his wife, Jennifer, an awesome co-director or assistant director, and just the creativity, the creative approach that Chris and Jennifer had and have to this material was just very different from any other director that I have worked with. And I think, and I want to say this kind of from the perspective of the music director, but maybe you can reflect on that and find yourself, find this relevant to you as a cast member, as an actor as well. So whenever you work with a director that's new to you, that you haven't worked with before, I find that you always have to kind of explore the relationship and how the dominance and the give and take is going to work out. So different directors have different expectations on what kind of content, what kind of parameters they want to firmly set, versus where they want to give you space that you can fill out. And that's going to be different. That's going to be a different give and take between each different director. Each new director is going to be different in how they fill that and how they play how this relationship plays out between me as a music director and the director, or in your case, maybe you as a principal cast member or an ensemble cast member and the director. And so just in general terms, there's always going to be a space where the director fills something and then leaves space for you or for me as a music director to fill that from my end. And it's been just really gratifying again to work with Chris and Jennifer in that relationship and exploring how the music, how how the what the point of view of the music is, how the music and the musical intention, the musical composition drives decisions that may you know may be made differently by the director if they are considering certain aspects of the music that were maybe not obvious to them. And that's probably the case for West Side Story more so than for many other musicals, is that West Side Story has, I would say, an unusual depth for a musical. I think that has to do with the fact that the composer Leonard Bernstein is so versatile in his own background, as a conductor, as a composer of serious music. He's composed symphonies and serious music, deep music, for orchestra and for choirs and other ensembles, and for him, for a person with that background, and then also he has kind of a very large intention of as an educator for music appreciation, and so in both of these, so that's interpreting music, teaching the appreciation for complexity of music and what music can give listeners, even if they're kind of uninitiated and not very familiar with music, or not very used to listening to the in-depth structures of music. So Leonard Bernstein has done a lot of educational material in his time that have helped really unlock classical music to audiences that were otherwise not used to that music. So it's that, and then it's the interpretation as a conductor, and then there's his position as a serious composer of serious music, and so with all of that combined, for him to get into this genre of composing for musical, you kind of can expect this to be a more complex and a deeper structure than what would come out of Andrew Lloyd Webber or some other most other musical composers that compose more for an entertaining, a little bit fluffy musical style. So anyway, there are a lot of structural aspects that go very deep in the analysis of the composition of West Side Story, and it's that, and it's kind of like the motifs, the leitmotifs that go through, and then the inversions of different things that actually inform the meaning of certain pieces, of certain songs and dances, and why they are where they are, and what the meaning of this particular music is for the drama, for the dramaturgic aspect of how the storyline unfolds. And so this is actually something really important to communicate, and it's an important aspect of my role as a music director, to actually help the director understand that. And it's not to be expected of a director who focuses on their aspect of creative decision making to be aware of what the music actually has to say and has to contribute there. So that's an important aspect, and it was just great how we were able to kind of explore that, and how we were able to negotiate that space and go back and forth and have suggestions accepted, and just kind of work out the solutions that we came up with. I think that was very fruitful and very, very nice. I just want to share one thing that I told Chris also personally directly, but I wanted to kind of let you all know that was a thing that was so powerful to me from the visual aspects, and that is that whenever we had projections that went to blurriness, that's when, during the dream sequence that happened, also during the meeting sequence, it happened in the bridal store when the scene unfolds between Maria and Tony, where One Hand, One Heart is sung at the end. So those are scenes where all of a sudden the projections drop from being clear to becoming blurry. And this has a very powerful visual effect of focusing into bringing into focus the actors and the kind of the profiles of it. It had to me, it has kind of a similar effect that you get when you take a photo in profile mode, which makes the backgrounds blurry, right? But it kind of chisels out the actual subject that is the focus of the of attention, and it makes it more sharp and more more clear in that. And I thought that was a really, really powerful creative aspect of how Chris did these projections. So that was awesome to see from the audience, and I guess not so easy to appreciate from the point of view of the cast. Okay, so let's go further along. I've already mentioned appreciation for the ensemble members as a whole, and I think that is really something I want to reiterate and really tell you how powerful you, each and every individual one of you, were for creating the texture of each scene, and just how everything, the colors all work together, the colors of the different personalities that every role and every character and every actor manifested in the character that you created in the show. It was all very, very powerful. And every time one of you was missing for one reason or another, and we had to do some swing, or sometimes we had actually a few less cast members on stage than in the full conception of the show, and so every time that happened, I can tell you were clearly missing by comparison to when you were there. So you all were awesome, whether you were singing or not. And that takes me to another point that I wanted to mention, and that is that as far as the cast and the casting goes, I felt that we had the absolute dream perfect cast. Everything about casting was very natural and normal and perfect. And where it kind of was challenged by things that happened as what we call offstage drama, and it's kind of like, it's obviously not a welcome thing at the time when it happens. And I think you should always do your utmost possible to avoid that, and try to find solutions that are that have less of a negative impact at the moment on the creative process. But nonetheless, where that happened and where that led to changes in casting, I want to say it always worked itself out for the better. And that's not to say that everyone who left the show was a bad choice, or would have been worse than the people that replaced them. You would have probably been the perfect person if you had not left the show. But since you left the show, you weren't the perfect person, and it came out even better and even more perfect in the way that replacements worked out. It's like the most outstanding revelation of that was probably Jaden as the swing for Anita, because she wasn't an originally cast Anita, but she pulled off such a powerful Anita after a change was made in that casting. And that was just to show us that she would have been the perfect cast anyway. So it's just to hammer that point home. It was just, everything was for the better, and the cast was perfect, from every single ensemble member to the principals that carried the show. So as far as that goes, talking a little bit more about the music of the show, there's a strange thing in this show about how different tasks are distributed, or poorly distributed, you could say, across different groups of the cast. it's like the singing is very unevenly distributed. The dancing is quite unevenly distributed. And so that leads to some people who may have, after being cast, realize that disappointingly, they didn't have much to sing, so the Jet girls were subject to that. And while there's nothing you can do about it, or not this, it's like complaining about that has no merit, because the show was just written that way, and short of just rewriting everything and making the Jets a mixed gender group of people, there's nothing you can do about that, right? Because the show is just the way it is. So complaining about that or developing a gripe that reflects, somehow on the team or the staff is just not, it's not helpful. It doesn't go anywhere. But anyway, so the good side of that is that you actually kind of have the luxury of music. From the music perspective, you have the luxury of not having to learn too much music for the ensemble as a general. So I would say almost all of the other musicals that I've done so far were kind of overloading the ensemble with a bunch of different stuff. And we usually have this, you usually have the situation that you have music rehearsals, and then you get it really good at the end of music rehearsals, and then you add choreography and the blocking and everything else to it, and by the end of that process, you pretty much are at the top peak performance level of the music at the end of music rehearsal, and you kind of just try to patch everything up and hold it up as good as you can. And I felt that in this case, with regards to the ensemble singing, this wasn't the case at all. We had the luxury of having relatively little to sing for the ensemble, and we had enough rehearsals to keep repeating those and integrating it with the choreography, so that the pieces, the components between singing and dancing, stayed in balance and stayed at the peak of and at the top of your attention. And that's how we were able to save more of that. I would argue all of it really through all of the performances, and we had a very, very high level of detail in the ensemble singing, and you trusted my choices that I suggested, and you really you stuck with them, and it was really great. For example, I mean, the biggest example is always the Tonight number, the quintet, and you have different ways of doing that, and we decided to get the entire ensemble involved with it, but that required a lot of discipline on the part of the ensemble singers, because it becomes a hard task to layer the to organize the layers so that they're not standing in each other's way. And I think that all of the choices that we made and that we explored together were really fruitful and helpful, and it worked out really well. From the idea that the Jets have a kind of a more of a brighter sound and the Sharks have more of a warmer, rounder sound. That was a really cool contrast that played out really well in that number. And to just rearranging the distribution of the solo lines between Tony and Maria, and how the whole texture came about and was chiseled out. It was really, really gratifying and well done, and it required a lot of discipline on the part of the ensemble to stick with the details that we worked out. And I think we were able to do that in part because it wasn't too much music to learn for the individual singers. So the fact that stuff is distributed unevenly and kind of unfairly is an opportunity to make it great, because it's not too much. So then the next is my principals. My principals were just so awesome to work with. And I've said that before in other contexts, and I think I've said it during rehearsals as well. I always look at the process as a development where I have a vision, I have ideas, but in the process of the rehearsals, particularly with the principals, we work out how this can be done most ideally for the performers. and also capturing the challenge, facing the challenge of performing to tracks that have a set performance built into them. The problem with that is that when you're working with tracks, you always have certain places in the track where it's difficult to find exactly the timing of the expression that is frozen in the track, that is the one choice that has been made for you, for us, right? So in a perfect world, the way this is intended to go is you as the principal have the luxury of giving your performance slightly differently every night you perform, and the orchestra will follow you, and so it'll ideally always go together, but it won't be exactly the same every time. But it's up to you, the principal, to work it out every time and do it the way that you want to do it with slight variations, and the orchestra will follow you. In this case, it's kind of the opposite, and that kind of turns the challenge on its head, because now what we have to do is we have to explore the emotional and intentional content that is in the track and make that our own, so that it sounds like we're doing the lead, we're leading the expression, and the track is following us. That's always the holy grail of a goal of performing with tracks. If you don't go for it in that, with that intention, in my opinion, you're just kind of doing a glorified karaoke session. But the opportunity of working with tracks is that. So grab that emotional intention that is in the track, make it your own, and work it out technically, and then work it out emotionally, so that it works out every night and every performance, and it comes across as an authentic emotional expression every time you do it. And I think that all of the principal performers were just really awesome to work with, and you achieved such a high level of artistic, professional, just level of quality, and it was just awesome to do that from the point of view of the music director, and then also from the point of view of designing the sound, because as a sound designer, as a sound mixer, I feel that we kind of almost do the music together, because that little bit of variation that we can bring into the track, that is always the same performance, but it almost feels like the performance is ever so slightly different depending on how we dynamically play this together in the moment of each performance. And that was very gratifying for my part, doing that and living through that with you in every performance that we did. And also, how you actually performed that on your end, that was just really awesome. So I think I said almost everything I had intended to say. And I want to again, thank each and every one of you for being in the show, and for sticking with it, for sticking it out, for your dedication to stick with the exploration that we found as our solution, and as the performance that we wanted to show the audiences. And I also want to say thank you to Stephen, our stage manager, and all the other crew for being, so great to work with. And thank you for the learning experience that I had through the show. And that's all I have to say. It's been much longer than it could have been at the end of the last circle. But it's nice that I was able to do it. And I love you all, each and every one of you. And I look forward to doing another show with you, hopefully sometime in the future. Take care. This is Thomas signing off from the Artisan Sound channel.